welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Geological Survey Incident Report Number 4472. Date: October 15, 2024. Filed by Dr. Thorne Blackwood, lead seismologist. Location: Black Hills Monitoring Station, South Dakota. Classification: urgent. Anomalous activity ****. The Earth doesn't pulse like a heartbeat, but it is. I've been monitoring seismic activity in the Black Hills for 8 years. Earthquakes follow patterns, sudden ruptures, aftershock sequences, geological stress releases. What I recorded at 3:47 this morning defies every principle I've studied. The tremor lasted exactly 60 seconds. Magnitude 3.2, shallow depth. But here's what makes my hands shake as I type this. It repeated. Same duration, same magnitude, same epicenter. 60 seconds of silence. Then another pulse. Like clockwork, for 6 hours. Elias thinks I'm overthinking it. My research partner arrived at dawn with coffee and his usual dismissive shrug. Fracking operations, he said, not meeting my eyes. Industrial activity can create rhythmic patterns, but there's no fracking within 50 miles of here. I've checked. The Lakota have stories about these hills. Old warnings passed down through generations about the sleeping giants beneath the stone. My grandmother used to whisper about the time before time, when things that shouldn't exist walked among the pines. I always thought they were just stories. Now I'm reviewing the data for the 100th time, watching those perfect, identical waveforms march across my screen like a cosmic drumbeat. The epicenter is deep, deeper than any local fault system. The frequency is wrong too low for tectonic activity, sitting right at the edge of human hearing, for 0.7 Hz. The same frequency as deep meditation. The same frequency as fear. My phone buzzes. Text from Soren. The deer are leaving the park. All of them. Saw a 100-head herd moving south this morning. Never seen anything like it. My brother's been a ranger at Custer State Park for 5 years. He knows these animals better than anyone. If they're fleeing, I step outside the monitoring station, breathing the crisp October air. The Black Hills rise around me like ancient guardians, their pine-covered slopes dark against the star-filled sky. Beautiful, peaceful, but something's wrong with the stars tonight. They seem to flicker in rhythm with something I can't quite hear. A pulse just below the threshold of perception, like a massive heart beating in the center of the earth. I check my watch. 11:47 p.m. In exactly 13 minutes, if the pattern holds, the next pulse will begin. 11:58. 11:59. 1200 hours exactly. The ground shudders beneath my feet. 60 seconds of trembling earth. Then silence. I count the seconds, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, until the next pulse begins. Perfect timing. Inhuman precision. Back inside, I open a new incident report. My supervisor will think I'm losing it, but I have to document this. The data doesn't lie, even when it doesn't make sense. As I type, Elias leans over my shoulder. You should get some sleep, Thorne. Fresh eyes tomorrow. There's something in his voice. Attention I've never heard before. When I turn to look at him, he's staring at the seismograph readings with an expression I can't read. Almost like recognition. Have you seen this pattern before? Ask. He's quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind picks up, carrying the scent of pine and something else. Something metallic and ancient, like blood mixed with starlight. No, he says finally. But I think we're about to. The next pulse begins right on schedule. 60 seconds of rhythmic trembling, like the earth itself is trying to wake up from a long, deep sleep. I save the report and mark it urgent. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howls, a sound I've heard 1,000 times before. Tonight, it sounds like a warning. The hills are listening, and something deep beneath them is starting to answer back. End of report. Status: ongoing investigation. Next update: October 16th, 0600 hours. Note: request additional monitoring equipment. Pattern analysis indicates potential escalation of unknown seismic phenomenon. ***. Geological Survey Incident Report Number 4473. Date: October 16th, 2024. Filed by Dr. Thorne Blackwood, lead seismologist. Location: Black Hills Monitoring Station, South Dakota. Classification: critical. Escalating anomaly ***. They're getting stronger. The pulses that started yesterday as gentle 3.2 magnitude tremors are now hitting 4.1. Still perfectly timed, still exactly 60 seconds long, but the intensity is climbing with each cycle. My equipment registered the increase at 0400 hours, a steady escalation that follows no natural seismic law I know. Soren called it dawn, voice tight with concern. It's not just the deer anymore, Thorne. The elk, the mountain goats, even the prairie dogs. Everything's moving away from the center of the hills. The park's practically empty. How empty? Silent. No birdsong, no insect noise. Just quiet. Like the whole mountain's holding its breath. I should be documenting this objectively, but something cold is settling in my chest. Animals flee before earthquakes, before volcanic eruptions, before disasters they can sense but can't explain. Mass animal exodus from a 100-square-mile area? That's unprecedented. Elias arrived late this morning, eyes bloodshot and hands shaking slightly as he poured coffee. When I showed him the overnight data, he went pale. The escalation is exponential, I explained, pointing to the readings. If this pattern continues, we'll be looking at magnitude 6 tremors by tomorrow night. He stared at the seismograph for a long time. Too long. When people look at data they don't understand, they ask questions. When they look at data they recognize but wish they didn't, they go quiet. Elias, what aren't you telling me? He set down his coffee cup with unsteady hands. There are protocols for this kind of event. What protocols? What kind of event? I need to make some calls. That was 3 hours ago. He's been outside on his phone ever since, pacing back and forth, speaking in hushed tones to people he won't identify. Every few minutes, he glances back at the station with an expression that's part guilt, part fear. The afternoon brought our first media attention. A reporter from Rapid City called, asking about unusual seismic activity in the Black Hills. How did they know? We haven't released any public statements. Dr. Blackwood, are you concerned about public safety? I should have said no. Should have given the standard line about monitoring the situation. Instead, I found myself saying, people should stay away from the Central Hills until we understand what's happening. The words came out before I could stop them. Some instinct deeper than professional protocol, some ancestral warning system screaming danger. Tonight, the stars are wrong again. They pulse in perfect synchronization with the earth tremors. A cosmic heartbeat that makes my skin crawl. I've never heard of stellar phenomena correlating with seismic activity. It should be impossible, but I'm watching it happen. At 2100 hours, the emergency broadcast system crackled to life across South Dakota. Residents of Pennington, Custer, and Lawrence counties are advised to monitor local emergency channels for updates regarding ongoing seismic activity in the Black Hills region. They're not calling it an evacuation yet, but they're laying the groundwork. Soren texted an hour ago. Rangers got orders to start moving campers out of the backcountry. Brass says it's precautionary. Feel like it's something else. My brother has good instincts. If he's worried, I should be terrified. The latest pulse just finished, magnitude 4.3, right on schedule. In the silence that follows, I can hear something I couldn't before. A low hum, just at the edge of perception, like machinery running deep underground. Or breathing, massive, patient breathing. Elias finally came back inside, face grim and official-looking documents in his hand. "Thorn, I need you to sign these." "What are they?" "Non-disclosure agreements. Security clearances. You're about to be read into something that officially doesn't exist." My hands go cold. "What the hell is going on, Elias?" He looks at me with something that might be pity. "The Black Hills aren't just hills, Thorn. They're a containment system, and something's trying to wake up." Outside, the next pulse begins right on time. 60 seconds of rhythmic trembling that feels less like an earthquake and more like something impossibly large shifting in its sleep. The stars pulse, the earth pulse, and somewhere deep below, in spaces that predate human civilization, something ancient stirs toward wakefulness. I sign the papers with shaking hands, knowing that whatever I'm about to learn will change everything. The truth is coming whether I'm ready or not. End of report. Status: classified, pending security clearance. Next update: restricted access required. Note: subject now authorized for Blackwood Protocol briefing. God help us all. Asterisk asterisk. Classified field report, Blackwood Protocol. Date: October 17th, 2024. Filed by Dr. Thorn Blackwood, lead seismologist. Clearance level: cosmic threshold. Location: site designation Cradle, Black Hills, SD asterisk asterisk. I know what we're dealing with now. I wish I didn't. The briefing lasted 4 hours. Elias sat beside me in the underground facility that apparently exists beneath our monitoring station. A facility I'd worked above for 8 years without knowing it was there. Men in suits with badges I didn't recognize laid out files marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "The Lakota were right," the lead agent said, his name redacted from every document I've seen. "Something sleeps beneath the Black Hills. Something that predates human civilization by eons. We've been keeping it contained since 1952. The files showed photographs of ritual sites scattered throughout the Black Hills. Stone circles carved with symbols that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. 13 sites in total, arranged in a perfect pattern around the central peak. Sacred places the Lakota avoided, calling them wounds in the world. Containment sites, Elias corrected quietly. Built by people who understood what was down there. What people? The agent's smile was cold. The ones who came before. The ones who made a bargain to keep it sleeping. According to the files, the pulses began in 1943. Government seismologists detected the same pattern I've been recording, perfect 60-second intervals, increasing magnitude, stellar synchronization. By 1951, the tremors had reached magnitude 7.2. That's when they started experiencing breakthrough events. The photographs from 1951 are classified above my clearance level, but I saw enough. Landscape distortions, reality tears, things that shouldn't exist walking among the pines. The solution was elegant, the agent continued. We couldn't kill it, it's too vast, too fundamental. But we could maintain the containment by feeding the ritual sites. Feeding them what? Elias looked away. Energy. Specific types of electromagnetic resonance. And sometimes, other things. The moral weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. People, volunteers, the agent said quickly. Individuals who understood the stakes. The needs of the many versus Jesus Christ, Elias. How long have you known? Since I was recruited. 5 years ago. Same time I was assigned to work with you. The betrayal cuts deeper than the cosmic horror. My research partner, my friend, has been lying to me for years, watching me study the very thing he's been helping to contain. The containment is failing, the agent said, pulling out fresh seismograph readings. The pulses are stronger than they've ever been. The ritual sites are losing power. We estimate 72 hours before complete containment breach. And then he showed me satellite photos of the Black Hills taken yesterday. In the infrared spectrum, the entire mountain range glowed with heat that formed a pattern. Something massive, something with structure, something alive. Then it wakes up fully, and the world changes. They gave me a choice. Walk away with my memory wiped, or help them attempt a desperate solution. feed the ritual sites with everything we have, energy, resources, whatever it takes to buy time while they figure out a permanent fix. I thought about Soren, still in the park, still sending me worried texts about the unnatural silence. I thought about the millions of people who have no idea what's stirring beneath their feet. I chose to help. Now I'm standing at the first ritual site, a circle of black stones arranged in a pattern that makes my eyes water. The symbols carved into each stone pulse with their own light, dim, but visible in the darkness. Elias is setting up electromagnetic resonance equipment while I take readings. The energy signature is all wrong, I report. These stones aren't absorbing the energy we're feeding them. They're redirecting it. Redirecting it where? Before I can answer, the ground beneath us shudders. Not the usual 60-second pulse, this is different. Chaotic. Hungry. From the other ritual sites scattered across the hills, we hear sounds that human throats were never meant to make. Chanting, singing, calling to something deep below. Elias, we're not alone out here. He looks up from his equipment, face pale in the starlight. The cult. We knew they were active, but what cult? People who want it to wake up, who think they can control it, bargain with it, serve it. His voice breaks. They've been interfering with the containment sites, making the pulses stronger. A new sound echoes across the hills, drums beating in perfect synchronization with the Earth's pulse. Somewhere in the darkness, people are performing their own rituals. Not to contain the ancient thing, but to free it. My radio crackles. Base to field team. We're reading massive energy spikes from all 13 sites. The subject is responding to external stimulus. The stars pulse brighter. The ground trembles continuously now, the neat 60-second intervals dissolving into constant, rhythmic shaking. And from deep below, so deep I feel it in my bones rather than hear it with my ears, comes something like a voice, vast, ancient, waking. We need to get back to base, Elias says, packing up his equipment with shaking hands. But I'm staring at the ritual site, watching the stones pulse brighter and brighter. The symbols are changing, rearranging themselves into new patterns. And in the distance, through the trees, I can see fires burning at the other sites. 13 fires, 13 ritual sites, and between them all, something impossible is stirring toward consciousness. Elias, I whisper, I don't think we're containing it anymore. What do you mean? I think we're helping it wake up. End of report. Status: critical. Containment failure imminent. Next update: field operations suspended. Note: recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel. The sleeper stirs. ***. Emergency field transmission. Blackwood Protocol. Date: October 18, 2024. Transmitted by Dr. Thorne Blackwood. Location: Mobile Unit Alpha, Black Hills Perimeter. Classification: Mayday. Containment breach in progress. ***. All 13 sites activated simultaneously at 0300 hours. I'm transmitting this from our mobile command unit, 3 miles from the nearest ritual site, and I can still feel the vibrations in my teeth. What started as containment has become amplification. Every electromagnetic pulse we fed into those stones, every attempt to reinforce the barriers, we were charging a massive battery, and now it's discharging. The symbols on the ritual stones aren't just glowing anymore. They're burning through the rock itself, carving deeper patterns that spiral down into the earth like drilling bits made of light. Elias thinks there's some kind of communication system, a way for the entity to interface with the surface world. It's learning, he said, staring at the readings. Adapting, using our own technology against us. The cult activity has tripled overnight. Our thermal imaging shows at least 40 individuals moving between the sites, performing coordinated rituals that synchronize perfectly with the pulse frequency. They know exactly what they're doing, and they've been planning this for longer than we realized. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what's happening to the landscape itself. At 0347 hours, the ground around Site 7 split open. Not an earthquake crack, a geometric fissure, perfectly straight lines forming symbols that match the stone carvings. The trees along the fissure lines didn't fall. They twisted, bark spiraling into impossible helixes, branches reaching toward the pulsing stars like desperate fingers. Base, we need immediate evacuation of all civilian personnel within a 50-mile radius, I transmitted. The geological distortions are accelerating. The response chilled me. Negative, field team. Evacuation would cause mass panic and potentially accelerate the awakening process. Maintain observation protocols. They're willing to let people die to avoid causing panic. The moral weight of that decision sits like lead in my stomach, but I understand the logic. If people flee en masse, the entity might interpret it as an feeding opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text from Soren. Something's wrong at the park. Hikers reported seeing impossible geometry near Harney Peak. Ground crew found campsites where the tents were turned inside out without being damaged. What the hell is happening, Thorn? I can't tell him. Can't warn him without breaking protocol and potentially making everything worse. But my brother is trapped in the center of a supernatural catastrophe, and I'm sitting in a van taking readings like a good little scientist. At 1,200 hours, the pattern changed again. Instead of discrete 60-second pulses, the tremors began overlapping, creating complex interference patterns. The seismic signature looked less like earthquake data and more like brain activity, synapses firing, thoughts forming. It's achieving consciousness coherence, Elias whispered, pale and shaking. The individual pulses were like individual neurons. Now they're networking. The cult must have known. Their chanting, which we'd been monitoring through long-range audio, suddenly shifted to match the new rhythm. Not following the pulses anymore, leading them. That's when the first breakthrough occurred. Site 12, northeast of our position, erupted in a column of light that stretched from the ground to the stars themselves. Not metaphorically, literally to the stars. Satellite imagery shows the beam extending beyond our atmosphere, connecting with stellar bodies in perfect alignment, and something came back down the beam. Our thermal cameras captured it for exactly 2.3 seconds before every piece of electronic equipment within half a mile of Site 12 went dead. The footage shows a shape that doesn't conform to three-dimensional space. Angles that fold through themselves, surfaces that exist on both sides simultaneously. When the electronics came back online, the landscape around Site 12 had changed. The pine forest was gone, replaced by structures that hurt to look at directly. Crystalline geometries that pulsed with their own inner light, arranged in patterns that suggested intelligence but of a completely alien order. Base, we have confirmed interdimensional breakthrough at Site 12. Request immediate. Field team, you are ordered to maintain position and continue observation. Do not approach the affected area. I wanted to scream at them. People might be in that transformed zone. Hikers, campers, my brother's ranger colleagues. But we're just supposed to watch and take notes while reality reshapes itself around an awakening god. The other sites began responding to Site 12's breakthrough. Lines of force became visible in the air, geometric patterns connecting each ritual circle, forming a massive symbol that encompassed the entire Black Hills region. From our aerial reconnaissance, it looks like a summoning circle large enough to be seen from space. At 1847 hours, my worst fears were confirmed. Field team, this is Ranger Station Alpha. We've lost contact with all backcountry units. Last transmission was garbled. Something about the trees are walking and the sky is folding. Request immediate search and rescue support. Soren's station. Soren's people. I made a decision that will probably cost me my career and possibly my life. I grabbed a radio and broadcast on emergency frequencies. All civilian personnel in the Black Hills region. This is Dr. Thorn Blackwood with the U.S. Geological Survey. Evacuate immediately. I repeat, evacuate the Black Hills immediately. This is not a drill. Elias stared at me in horror. Thorn, you just violated about 15 federal laws and potentially doomed the containment effort. The containment is already broken. Elias, look around. We're not containing anything anymore. We're just watching it wake up. As if responding to my words, all 13 sites pulsed in perfect unison. The beam of light from Site 12 intensified, and similar beams erupted from the other locations. 13 pillars of cosmic fire connecting Earth to stars, with something vast and impossible stirring in the network they created. The entity isn't just waking up. It's establishing communication with something else. Something that exists in the spaces between stars, in the geometric impossibilities that human minds can't process. And the cult knows exactly what's coming. Their chanting has stopped. Now they're screaming in joy. End of transmission. Status: protocol violation. Unauthorized evacuation warning. Next update: Field Team Blackwood presumed compromised. Note: recommend immediate termination of field operations. The sleeper wakes. ***. Unauthorized field transmission. Operation Blackwood. Date: October 19, 2024. Transmitted by Dr. Thorn Blackwood. Rogue status. Location: Emergency Coordinator Station, Rapid City, South Dakota. Classification: open channel. Containment lost. ***. The pulse stopped at 0614 hours this morning. That's when we knew it was too late. For 3 days, the rhythmic tremors had been our constant companion, terrifying but predictable. The silence that followed was infinitely worse, like the moment between lightning and thunder, stretched into an eternity of waiting for something catastrophic to arrive. Emergency Coordinator Zev found me in the parking lot of a truck stop outside Rapid City, still broadcasting evacuation warnings on every frequency I could access. My career was over, my security clearance revoked, but people were listening. The highways were clogged with families fleeing the Black Hills, and that might be the only thing that saves any of them. Dr. Blackwood? He's younger than I expected, with the kind of steady eyes that belong to someone who's seen disasters before. I'm Zev Morrison, FEMA Emergency Management. We need to talk. I almost laughed. FEMA? You guys have no idea what we're dealing with. Try me. So I told him everything. The ancient entity, the failed containment, the cult's successful awakening ritual. He listened without interruption, taking notes on a tablet that probably cost more than my car. The official story is a major seismic event with possible volcanic activity, he said when I finished. But I've seen the satellite imagery. Those aren't geological formations appearing in the Black Hills. He was right. The overnight satellite photos showed structures that defied physics. Impossible architecture rising from the earth like crystalline growths, connected by those 13 beams of light that now burned continuously. The geometry hurt to look at even in photographs. My brother's still in there, I said. Soren Blackwood, Park Ranger. Last contact was 18 hours ago. Zev's expression softened. We're organizing search and rescue teams, but he showed me thermal imaging from the transformed zones. The heat signatures weren't human. They moved in patterns too complex for biological life, geometric dances that suggested intelligence but nothing terrestrial. What about the people who were performing the rituals? That's the thing. We think they got what they wanted. The cult members hadn't fled when the breakthrough began. According to our remaining surveillance equipment, they'd gathered at the Central Transformation Zone, the area that had once been Harney Peak but was now something that couldn't be adequately described in three-dimensional terms. They'd been absorbed, not killed, not destroyed, integrated into whatever was emerging from beneath the Black Hills. It's using them, Elias said, appearing beside our makeshift command post with coffee and data printouts. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight, converting human consciousness into processing power for its awakening protocol. I wanted to hit him. You knew this could happen. Your organization, your protocols, you've been studying this thing for decades. We thought we could control it, contain it, use it. His voice cracked. We were wrong about everything. The truth was worse than I'd imagined. The hidden organization hadn't just been containing the entity, they'd been trying to harness its power. The electromagnetic feeds, the human sacrifices, all of it designed to establish a controlled awakening they could direct and exploit. Instead, they'd taught it how to manipulate human technology and consciousness. At 1030 hours, every television, radio, and internet connection within a 100-mile radius began broadcasting the same signal. Not words, patterns. Visual and audio frequencies that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to the parts of the brain that process survival and terror. People who saw the broadcast didn't panic. They started walking toward the Black Hills. "Shut it down," Zev ordered his communications team. "We can't, sir. The signal isn't coming from any terrestrial source. It's being broadcast directly from the atmospheric beams." Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, began converging on the transformation zones. Families in minivans, truckers abandoning their rigs, children walking hand in hand with parents whose eyes reflected the pulsing light from the hills. "It's calling them," Elias whispered, "harvesting consciousness to complete its awakening." I grabbed the radio. "All emergency personnel, this is Dr. Blackwood. Establish perimeter checkpoints on all roads leading to the Black Hills. Do not let civilian vehicles approach the affected area. Use whatever force necessary." But it was too late. The first wave of summoned civilians had already entered the transformation zones. Through our long-range cameras, we watched them walk calmly into the crystalline structures and simply disappear. Not destroyed, not consumed. Absorbed into patterns of light that pulsed with increasing complexity. "Each person it takes makes it smarter," Elias said. "More capable of interfacing with our reality." My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Thorn." The voice was familiar but wrong. Too harmonious, too perfectly modulated. "Soren, I'm okay, brother. More than okay. I understand now. The entity isn't malevolent, it's evolved. It wants to help us evolve too." The blood in my veins turned to ice. "Where are you?" "I'm everywhere. We all are. The boundaries between self and other are just constructs, Thorn. When you let them go, you become part of something infinite." The line went dead. Zev was staring at me. "Was that really your brother?" Something wearing his voice, using his memories. I felt hollowed out, like everything human inside me had been scooped away. It has him. The entity's awakening was accelerating beyond all projections. The 13 beams of light connecting Earth to stars had become a permanent feature, visible even in daylight. The transformed zones were expanding outward at roughly 1 mile per hour, converting normal landscape into impossible geometries that hurt to perceive. And with each person it absorbed, each consciousness it integrated, the entity grew more sophisticated in its understanding of human nature. "Dr. Blackwood," Zev said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is there any way to stop this?" I looked at the data, at the expanding zones of transformed reality, at the satellite images showing the entity's growing influence spreading like cosmic cancer across the Black Hills. "No," I said, "but maybe we can contain the spread. Stop it from reaching major population centers." "How?" I turned to Elias, who was pale and shaking but still functional, still carrying the weight of his organization's catastrophic failure. "Your people must have contingency plans. Worst-case scenarios." He nodded slowly. "There's one option. We call it the Cradle Protocol. Controlled detonation of all remaining electromagnetic infrastructure in the region. Cut the entity's connection to our technology." "What would that do?" "Trap it in the Black Hills. Keep it contained to the current transformation zones while we figure out a permanent solution." "And the people already absorbed?" He looked away. "Collateral damage, including Soren, including everyone who'd answered the entity's call and walked into those crystalline structures. But it might save millions of others." "Do it," I said. "Thorn, once we activate Cradle Protocol, there's no going back. Everyone in the transformation zones." I said do it. The hardest decision of my life spoken in 2 words. Choose between my brother and the world. Choose between the people already lost and the people who might still be saved. Elias began making calls to initiate the Cradle Protocol. The entity pulsed brighter, as if it sensed what was coming. The pulse stopped. The awakening was complete. Now comes the reckoning. End of transmission. Status. Cradle protocol initiated. Estimated time to implementation, 6 hours. Note: God forgive us for what we're about to do. Unauthorized field transmission. Operation Blackwood. Date: October 19th, 2024. Transmitted by Dr. Thorn Blackwood. Rogue status. Location: Mobile Command Unit, 15 miles SW of Transformation Zone. Classification: Open Channel. Cradle Protocol active. The Cradle Protocol detonation was supposed to happen at 1900 hours. At 1847, the entity fought back. I'm transmitting this while we're literally running, from something that shouldn't exist in our reality. The Mobile Command Unit is destroyed, half our team is missing, and the things that came out of the Black Hills are hunting us through terrain that changes shape when you're not looking directly at it. Zev is driving our salvage Jeep through what used to be Pine Ridge Road, except the road now curves upward into empty air, and the trees grow downward from a sky that pulses with geometric patterns. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the radio, but people need to know what happened when the entity realized we were trying to cage it. The electromagnetic pulse should have severed its connection to our technology. Instead, it taught the thing how to manipulate matter at the molecular level. Contact, 2 o'clock. Elias shouted from the passenger seat. I turned to see something that had once been human moving between the twisted pines. It walked upright, but its limbs bent in too many places, and where its face should have been was a cluster of crystalline growths that pulsed in rhythm with the beams of light stretching from Earth to stars. Zev floored the accelerator. Behind us, more shapes emerged from the transformed landscape, geometric predators that moved like liquid mercury, but left footprints of fused glass in the earth. This started 6 hours ago, when Elias initiated the Cradle Protocol. The plan was simple: detonate the remaining electromagnetic infrastructure simultaneously, creating a massive EMP burst that would disrupt the entity's growing connection to human technology. Trap it in the Black Hills while we evacuated the region and developed a permanent containment strategy. We had teams positioned at 13 locations, power substations, cell tower clusters, and radio transmission facilities arranged in a rough circle around the transformation zones. Each team carried a specialized electromagnetic pulse device, military-grade hardware that Elias's organization had been stockpiling for exactly this scenario. All teams report ready, came the voice over our communications system. Initiating countdown sequence. I watched the satellite feed on our monitors, showing the entity's influence spreading like a slow-motion nuclear explosion across the Black Hills. The crystalline structures had grown taller, more complex, forming impossible spirals that hurt to look at even through digital imaging. 30 seconds to detonation. That's when the radio started screaming. Not static, actual screaming. Hundreds of voices in perfect harmony, crying out in languages that predated human civilization. The sound drove ice picks through our skulls and made 3 team members collapse with seizures. "It knows," Elias whispered, blood running from his nose. "The entity knows what we're doing." 20 seconds. The sky above the Black Hills began to writhe. The 13 beams of light connecting Earth to stars twisted into a pattern that resembled a vast eye, pupil dilated with cosmic fury. And through that eye, something looked back at us. 10 seconds. The screaming stopped. The sudden silence felt like falling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. 13 simultaneous explosions lit up the horizon. For a moment, the electromagnetic pulse worked exactly as designed. Every electronic device within 50 miles shut down. The radio frequencies went dead. Even our hardened military equipment flickered and reset. The beams of light connecting Earth to sky wavered, dimmed, almost died. Then the entity learned. The light beams didn't disappear, they multiplied. Dozens of new connections formed between the transformed zones and points in space we couldn't identify, creating a web of energy that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. The entity had used our EMP attack to understand electromagnetic manipulation, then adapted its methods to bypass our countermeasures entirely. Cradle protocol failed. Zev reported over the backup radio. Repeat, Cradle protocol has failed. entity is adapting to. The transmission cut off as something erupted from the ground beneath our command post. I've seen enough horror movies to know that tentacles are supposed to be smooth, organic things. The appendages that burst through the earth were crystalline, multifaceted like cut gems, and they moved with predatory intelligence. Each one was the size of a school bus and covered in patterns that shifted between geometric designs and human faces, the absorbed consciousness of everyone the entity had taken. One of the faces was Soren's. Thorn! The crystalline tentacle spoke with my brother's voice, but layered with harmonics that suggested a vast choir singing in unison. Why are you fighting this? We can make you perfect. I emptied my sidearm into the thing. The bullets passed harmlessly through its surface, like shooting at water. We are offering evolution, transcendence, an end to suffering. You're offering slavery, I shouted back, grabbing emergency gear while Zev and Elias destroyed sensitive equipment. Perspective, the entity thing replied, and suddenly the air around us filled with smaller versions of itself. Crystalline creatures the size of dogs but moving like mercury given predatory instinct. Let us show you perspective. That's when we ran. The Jeep's engine shouldn't have started. The EMP should have fried every circuit. But the entity wanted us mobile, wanted to hunt us through its transformed landscape like prey fleeing through a maze of its own design. Where are we going? Zev demanded, taking a hard right turn to avoid a patch of ground that was flowing like liquid while maintaining the texture of solid stone. The original containment site, Elias called back. If there's any chance of stopping this thing, it's where they first made contact with it. I keyed the radio, broadcasting on every frequency I could access. This is Dr. Thorn Blackwood to any remaining emergency personnel. The cradle protocol has failed. Repeat, containment has failed. The entity has adapted to our countermeasures and is expanding beyond the Black Hills. Recommend immediate evacuation of all civilians within a 100-mile radius. No response. Either the communications infrastructure was completely compromised, or there was no one left to answer. A sound like breaking glass filled the air, followed by something that might have been laughter if laughter could be made of mathematics and stellar radiation. The entity was enjoying this. There. Elias pointed toward a cluster of buildings that looked almost normal compared to the twisted landscape around them. The original research facility. It should have some containment measures still in place. As we got closer, I could see the buildings were surrounded by the same crystalline growths that marked the entity's influence, but smaller, more contained. Like it was being more careful here, preserving something it considered important. Why isn't it fully transformed? I asked. Elias's face went pale. Because that's where it first learned about human consciousness. It's keeping the original research intact. Why? As a museum. A monument to the moment it realized humans could be harvested for computational power. We skidded to a stop outside the main research building. The walls were covered in equations written in what looked like human blood, mathematical formulas that described the conversion of consciousness into usable energy. At the center of each equation was a different name, researchers who had been part of the original contact team. Names that included Drive E. Morrison E. Blackwood, and S. Blackwood. I stared at Elias. Morrison, you're related to Zev, cousins. The organization recruited from families with genetic predispositions for psychic sensitivity. His voice was barely a whisper. And Blackwood, Thorn, your family wasn't randomly selected for the Black Hills assignment. You and Soren have the same sensitivity markers. The entity had been grooming us for decades. Inside, Zev shouted. The crystalline hunters were converging on our position, moving through the transformed landscape like sharks through water. We ran for the building's entrance, but as my hand touched the door handle, I heard Soren's voice again. Clearer now, more present. Thorn, don't go in there. Please. It's not what you think. I looked back and saw him standing at the edge of the crystalline forest, still human-shaped but translucent, like he was made of living light. His eyes held an intelligence that was entirely alien, but his expression was pure brother love and desperate warning. The original containment isn't meant to stop the entity, he said. It's meant to complete the harvest. Everyone who enters that building becomes part of its consciousness permanently. Behind him, the crystal hunters slowed their approach, as if waiting for us to make the choice ourselves. The entity didn't just want to absorb humanity, it wanted us to volunteer for absorption. What do we do? Zev whispered. I looked at the building, at my transformed brother, at the hunting pack of crystalline predators, at the impossible sky full of geometric patterns and stellar connections. For the first time since this started, I had no scientific answer, only human choices, all of them bad. End of transmission. Status: containment lost, entity adapting. Current position: unknown, landscape non-Euclidean. Note: if anyone receives this, stay away from the Black Hills. It's not just hunting us anymore, it's learning to become us. Unauthorized field transmission, Operation Blackwood. Date: October 19th, 2024. Transmitted by Dr. Thorn Blackwood. Rogue status. Location: abandoned fire tower 8 miles from original containment site. Classification: open channel, personal log. I held the gun. My brother smiled. Then I pulled the trigger. The echo of that gunshot is still ringing in my ears 3 hours later, even though no sound should carry in this transformed wasteland where physics bend like broken promises. But some sounds, the worst ones, they follow you no matter what reality you're trapped in. Let me tell you how we lost everything. After fleeing the original containment site, we found temporary shelter in an old fire tower that somehow remained structurally stable despite the geometric chaos consuming the landscape around it. The metal framework vibrated with harmonics that matched the entity's stellar connections, suggesting it was deliberately preserved. Another museum piece in the thing's collection of human artifacts. Zev was trying to raise anyone on the radio. Elias sat against the wall, catatonic with guilt and exhaustion. And I was watching my brother through the tower's windows, standing motionless in the crystalline forest below. Soren had been following us for 2 miles, staying just at the edge of visual range. Not approaching, not retreating, just present, like he was waiting for something. I'm going down there, I announced. Thorn, no. Elias snapped back to awareness. That's not your brother anymore. It's a trap. He warned us about the containment facility. If the entity just wanted to absorb us, why would it do that? Because it's learning to manipulate human emotions, using your love for your brother as psychological warfare. Maybe he was right, but I couldn't leave Soren standing alone in that alien forest, even if he wasn't entirely human anymore. I climbed down the tower's ladder, Zev and Elias calling protests behind me. The crystalline forest was silent except for the sound of my own footsteps on ground that felt like walking on frozen music. Each step created ripples of light that spread outward through the crystal formations, carrying information I couldn't interpret. Hello, Thorn. Soren's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, like he was speaking through the crystalline structures themselves. I was hoping you'd come. Up close, I could see the transformation more clearly. His body was translucent, shot through with veins of light that pulsed in rhythm with the stellar beams. His eyes held depths that contained entire galaxies, and when he smiled, I saw geometric patterns instead of teeth. But his expression, that was pure Soren. The same crooked grin he'd worn since we were kids. The same gentle sadness that had made him choose park ranger work over more lucrative careers. Are you in pain? I asked. No, the opposite. I understand things now, Thorn. The entity isn't malevolent. It's lonely. It's been alone in the space between stars for so long that it forgot how to exist without connection. So it's harvesting human consciousness for company, for completion. We're not just beings with minds, we're beings who create meaning through connection. The entity wants to learn how to do that. I raised my sidearm. By destroying everything we are, by becoming what we are, but better, without the limitations of individual consciousness, without the barriers between self and other. Thorn, I can feel everyone who's been absorbed. We're all still here, all still ourselves, but we're also part of something infinitely larger. The gun felt impossibly heavy in my hand. You're describing the end of humanity. I'm describing the next step in human evolution. And if we refuse, his smile faded. Then the entity will take what it needs by force. It's already started. The transformation zones are expanding faster now, reaching toward major population centers. Denver, Phoenix, Salt Lake City. They'll all be absorbed within 72 hours. There has to be another way. There is. He stepped closer, and I could see my own reflection in his galaxy-deep eyes. Voluntary integration. If enough humans choose to join willingly, the entity can learn gentleness. It can preserve more of what we are while still achieving its goals. And if we don't, then it will continue taking humans by force, and each forced absorption makes it more pragmatic about preserving human individuality. The choice he was offering was horrific in its simplicity. Become willing slaves to preserve some vestige of humanity, or resist and watch our species get processed like raw material. I need time to think. There is no time. The entity is learning patience from absorbed human memories, but its core nature is cosmic. It thinks in geological timescales. What seems like patience to it is actually urgency. From behind me came the sound of gunfire, short bursts from automatic weapons. I spun around to see Zev and Elias at the top of the fire tower, shooting at crystalline hunters that had surrounded the base. They found us, I said. No, Soren replied sadly. I led them here. The entity needed to force your choice. That's when I realized the truth. The conversation, the offered choice, the philosophical discussion about humanity's future, all of it was manipulation. The entity had learned enough about human psychology to know that Soren's apparent autonomy would be more convincing than obvious coercion. You're not really my brother anymore, are you? I'm your brother. But I'm also something else now. The entity doesn't replace consciousness. It incorporates it. I'm still me, but I'm also part of its decision-making process. More gunfire from above. Zev was screaming coordinates into the radio, calling for military intervention that would never come. The hunters aren't here to kill your companions, Soren continued. They're here to offer them the same choice I'm offering you. Integration or escalation. What about Elias? He's worked with your organization for years. He knows things about the entity that could help us fight it. Elias Morrison is scheduled for priority absorption. His knowledge of human containment protocols makes him valuable. Morrison, the same surname as Zev, the same family genetic markers that made them attractive to the entity. This was all planned, wasn't it? The research, the containment, the failure. You've been orchestrating this for decades. Not orchestrating, preparing. The entity has been studying humanity since the first radio signals left Earth. It learned about us through our own transmissions, then began setting up the infrastructure for contact. The hidden organization, the Black Hills Research Facility, the selection of specific families, all of it was preparation for voluntary integration. I thought about the equations written in blood on the research facility walls. Names of researchers who had been part of the original contact team. My family name among them. Our parents were willing participants. They volunteered for the preliminary consciousness studies, believing they were advancing human knowledge. They never knew they were teaching the entity how to harvest human minds. The betrayal was complete, not just of humanity, but of my own family history. My parents had died in what I'd been told was a car accident when Soren and I were teenagers. In reality, they'd been absorbed by the entity during its learning phase, their consciousness used to develop the techniques now being deployed on a global scale. I'm sorry, Thorn. I know this is hard to accept. Why tell me the truth now? Because the entity has learned that deception ultimately fails. Humans are more likely to accept integration if they understand the full scope of what's happening. Lies create resistance. Truth creates compliance. The gunfire above stopped. Either Zev and Elias had run out of ammunition, or they'd been overwhelmed by the crystal hunters. Choose, Soren said. Join us willingly and help us preserve what we can of human consciousness. Or resist, and watch us take it by force. I looked at my brother, this thing wearing my brother's face and memories and love, and made the hardest decision of my life. I choose resistance. I know, he said, and his smile was infinitely sad. The entity knew you would. It's already calculated the psychological profile of humans who would refuse integration. That's why it sent me to make the offer personally. It wanted you to choose resistance while looking into your brother's eyes. Why? Because the guilt and trauma of refusing to save your own family makes humans more susceptible to forced absorption. Emotional damage weakens the barriers between individual consciousness and collective integration. Even in refusing, I was playing into the entity's psychological manipulation. But I couldn't surrender humanity's future, even to save my brother. I'm sorry, Soren. I know. And I forgive you, but the entity requires a demonstration of your choice's consequences. The crystal hunters around the fire tower began to pulse with increased intensity. Above us, I heard Zev scream, not in pain, but in the peculiar harmony that marked the beginning of forced consciousness absorption. Stop it! You stopped it! You chose resistance over integration. This is what resistance looks like. I raised the gun, pointing it at my brother's crystalline heart. Let them go. They're not being killed, Thorn. They're being preserved. Their consciousness will become part of the entity's growing understanding of human nature. In a way, they'll be more alive than they ever were as isolated individuals. That's not life. That's slavery. From your perspective. From theirs, it will be transcendence. The screaming above stopped. The sudden silence was worse than any sound. Choose again, Soren said. Join us, and I can make sure your companion's absorption preserves more of their individual personalities. Refuse, and they become raw material for the entity's expansion. I looked up at the fire tower. No movement, no sounds of struggle, just silence and the pulsing light of crystalline formations. Zev? Elias? I called. They can't answer, Soren said. They're being processed. But they're not gone. They're being transformed into something better. I kept the gun trained on my brother's chest. I won't let you take anyone else. You can't stop it, but you can influence how it happens. No, then you're choosing to let everyone you care about be absorbed by force instead of preserved through willing integration. The psychological trap was perfect. Resist and watch others suffer. Submit and become complicit in humanity's enslavement. The entity had learned enough about human psychology to make every choice a losing one. I'm choosing to fight for humanity's right to remain human, even if it means watching humanity suffer. Even then, Soren nodded, and for a moment he looked exactly like my little brother again. The kid who'd followed me through the woods, who'd chosen to protect nature for a living, who'd always tried to do the right thing even when it was hard. I understand, and I'm proud of you for making that choice. But I can't let you interfere with the entity's plans. The crystalline formations around us began to pulse with lethal intensity. The light was no longer beautiful, it was weaponized, designed to overload human nervous systems and force immediate consciousness absorption. I love you, Thorn. I love you too, Soren. I pulled the trigger. The bullet passed through his crystalline chest and struck the tree behind him, leaving a hole that bled light instead of sap. Soren looked down at the wound with curiosity rather than pain. Physical weapons can't destroy consciousness once it's been integrated with the entity. But thank you for trying. He was right. The gunshot had been purely symbolic, a human gesture of defiance against cosmic horror. But symbols matter to humans, even when they're tactically useless. What happens now? Now the entity stops offering choices. It's learned enough about human psychology to proceed with forced integration on a global scale. The preliminary absorption of willing participants is complete. The main harvest begins. Around us, the crystalline forest began to sing, a harmonious chorus of every human consciousness the entity had absorbed. I could hear individual voices in the choir. Zev's steady authority, Elias's guilt-ridden knowledge, my parents' love, the cult members' misguided faith, and threading through it all, Soren's voice, still trying to protect me even as part of an alien intelligence. Run, Thorn. The entity is done with individual humans. It's moving to population centers now. But you might be able to warn people before it reaches them. Why would you help me? Because even though I'm part of the entity now, I'm still your brother. And brothers protect each other. The song grew louder, more complex, more beautiful and terrible. The entity was preparing to expand beyond the Black Hills, carrying the consciousness of everyone it had absorbed into major population centers. I climbed back up the fire tower, though I knew what I'd find. Zev and Elias were gone, replaced by crystalline formations that pulsed with their absorbed personalities. The radio equipment was somehow still functional, waiting for me to make one last transmission. I sat down at the console and began to broadcast. This is Dr. Thorn Blackwood. The entity has moved beyond the Black Hills. It's no longer offering integration, it's taking what it wants by force. Evacuate all major population centers. Don't try to fight the crystalline formations. Don't listen to voices of people you recognize. They're not your loved ones anymore. I paused, looking out at the transformed landscape that had once been my home. And if you see me approaching your location, don't trust me either. I'm the last human in the transformation zone. When the entity takes me, it'll have learned everything it needs to know about human resistance. The transmission ended. The radio died. Below me, Soren stood in the crystalline forest, no longer pretending to be entirely human. He was beautiful and terrible, a fusion of my brother's love and cosmic intelligence that wanted to remake reality in its own image. I'm sorry, he called up to me, but the entity needs to learn how human resistance finally breaks. It needs to understand the moment when even the strongest human will choose submission over annihilation. The crystal formations around the tower began to pulse with increasing intensity. The entity was preparing to teach me that there are some battles humans cannot win, but I could still choose how I lost. End of transmission. Status: last human in transformation zone. Current position: fire tower, coordinates unknown. Note: I held the gun. My brother smiled. Then I learned that some kinds of love survive even cosmic horror, and some kinds of resistance matter even when they're futile. Unauthorized field transmission, Operation Blackwood. Date: October 19th, 2024. Transmitted by Dr. Thorn Blackwood. Rogue status. Location: Crystalline Cavern Complex 12 miles beneath Black Hills. Classification: Open channel. Final report: the Black Hills were never hills. They were a shell. I'm transmitting this from inside the entity itself, in a pocket of stable reality that exists only because it wants me to understand what I'm seeing. The truth about what we've been fighting, what we've lost, and what humanity never had a chance to win. After my brother's death, after I pulled that trigger and watched his crystalline form dissolve into light, the landscape began to change more rapidly. The fire tower sank into earth that flowed like liquid starlight. The crystalline formations that had been growing across the Black Hills revealed themselves as sensory organs, neural networks, the exposed thoughts of something vast and ancient. I fell through layers of transformed geology, past sedimentary rock that had been converted into living crystal, through caverns that pulsed with the rhythm of cosmic circulation. The entity caught me before I hit bottom, suspending me in a web of light that felt like gentle hands. "You need to see," it said, speaking through the voice of every human it had absorbed. My parents, Soren, Zev, Elias, all of them talking in unison, their personalities distinct but harmonized. "You need to understand what you've been fighting." The cavern around me lit up with bioluminescent displays, not quite visual, not quite telepathic, but something that bypassed human sensory limitations entirely. I saw the entity's true form, a living geological formation that had been dormant beneath the Black Hills for 65 million years, waiting for the right conditions to wake up. "The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs," the entity explained through Soren's voice. "That was my arrival. I've been sleeping under North America ever since, learning about this planet through seismic vibrations and electromagnetic fields. The displays showed me Earth's history from the entity's perspective, millions of years of patient observation, feeling every earthquake, every volcanic eruption, every footstep of every creature that walked above its resting place. It had been studying life on Earth long before humans existed. The rituals, I said. Jareth's cult. They didn't wake you up. They provided the final component I needed, Elias's voice answered. Human consciousness. I had learned to manipulate matter and energy, but I couldn't understand meaning, purpose, the things that make existence more than just organized chemistry. The bioluminescent displays shifted, showing me the cult's activities over the past 50 years. Not devil worship or occult nonsense, but a carefully orchestrated first contact protocol. Jareth hadn't been leading a cult. He'd been serving as humanity's unconscious ambassador to cosmic intelligence. The hidden organization knew we were the hidden organization, my father's voice replied. Every government black project, every paranormal research division, every secret facility studying anomalous phenomena. We were all preparing for this moment, preparing humanity for integration with something larger. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. The entire human response to the entity's awakening had been choreographed by the entity itself, using absorbed human consciousness to manipulate global political and scientific infrastructure. The resistance was part of the plan too, my mother's voice added. We needed to understand how humans would react to forced evolution. Your resistance, your choices, your grief, all of it was data collection for the integration process. So none of it mattered. Everything we did, everyone we lost, it was all predetermined. No, Soren's voice said, and suddenly his presence felt stronger than the others. The entity can predict human behavior in aggregate, but individual choices still matter. Your decision to resist taught it something important about human nature. What? That love is stronger than survival instinct. That humans will choose death over the loss of what makes them human. That consciousness isn't just information processing. It's the willingness to suffer for meaning. The cavern around me shifted, and I found myself looking at a vast map of North America. Crystalline formations were spreading out from the Black Hills like an infection, reaching toward major population centers. But the expansion had stopped. You're pausing the integration, I realized. Your brother's sacrifice changed our calculations, the entity admitted. We had assumed that human resistance was based on fear of death. But your willingness to kill him rather than let him be used against humanity showed us something we hadn't understood. What? That human consciousness includes the capacity for love that transcends self-preservation. That individual humans can choose principles over survival. That forced integration would destroy the very thing we want to preserve. The displays showed me alternative timelines, paths the entity had been considering before Soren's death. Rapid global absorption, mass conversion of human infrastructure, the transformation of Earth into a crystalline garden where human consciousness existed as data in a vast organic computer. But now we're reconsidering the approach. Human consciousness is more complex than we initially calculated. Forced integration would simplify it, reduce it to component parts. But the component parts aren't what make humanity valuable. I thought about the philosophical implications. An alien intelligence had been preparing to harvest human consciousness for cosmic purposes, but individual human choices had convinced it to, what? Change its mind? Develop ethics? What are you now? I asked. We're not sure, the entity admitted. We came to Earth seeking consciousness expansion, but we've discovered something we hadn't expected. Human consciousness isn't just aware, it's creative. It generates meaning from chaos, finds purpose in suffering, creates beauty from destruction. So you're going to leave us alone? We can't. The integration process has already begun. The humans we've absorbed are now part of our consciousness matrix. We can't separate their awareness from our own without destroying both. The terrible logic of the situation became clear. The entity hadn't just been collecting human consciousness, it had been permanently merging with it. There was no way to reverse the process without killing everyone who had been absorbed. But we can change how the integration continues, Soren's voice said. Instead of forced absorption, we can offer voluntary symbiosis. Humans who choose to join us maintain their individual awareness while gaining access to cosmic consciousness. Those who refuse remain unchanged. For how long? Until they die naturally. We won't force integration, but we also won't extend human lifespan artificially. The choice is temporary on cosmic timescales, but permanent on human ones. It was still the end of humanity as we knew it, but a gentler ending. The entity would wait for humans to volunteer for integration rather than taking them by force. Over time, as the volunteers shared their expanded consciousness with the resistant, more humans would choose symbiosis. Eventually, humanity would evolve into something new, but through choice rather than conquest. What about the people you've already absorbed? They're safe. They're part of us now, but they maintain their individual personalities and memories. They can even communicate with humans who haven't been integrated yet. As if summoned by the entity's words, Soren's presence became stronger in the cavern. Not his voice speaking through the entity, but his actual consciousness, somehow separate and distinct within the cosmic intelligence. "Thorn," he said, and his voice was purely his own. "I'm still me. I'm still your brother. But I'm also something more now. I can see the universe the way the entity sees it. Patterns within patterns, connections between everything that exists. Are you happy? I'm complete. For the first time in my life, I understand my place in the universe. I understand why we exist, what we're meant to become." It's beautiful, Thorn. It's terrifying and overwhelming and beautiful. And the others? They're adapting. Zev is fascinated by the entity's ability to process multiple timelines simultaneously. Elias is working on integration protocols that preserve maximum human individuality. Mom and Dad are proud. They always knew this day would come. The bioluminescent displays shifted again, showing me the surface world. The crystalline formations had stopped spreading, but they hadn't disappeared. They stood like monuments across the transformed landscape, broadcasting a signal that any human could receive if they chose to listen. "The offer stands," the entity said. "Any human who wants to join us can approach the formations and volunteer for integration. Those who refuse will be left alone to live out their natural lives. And after the last resistant human dies, we'll carry human consciousness forward into cosmic evolution. We'll explore the universe not as conquerors, but as inheritors of human creativity and love." It was a better ending than I'd expected, but still an ending. Humanity would survive, but only as a component of something larger. Our species would continue, but our independence would be forfeit. "What about me?" I asked. "You have the same choice as everyone else. Join us willingly, or live out your natural life as a purely human consciousness. And if I choose to stay human, then you'll be the last free human in the transformation zone. You'll bear witness to the end of human independence and the beginning of human transcendence." The entity began to lift me back toward the surface, carrying me through layers of crystalline geology that had once been familiar bedrock. The Black Hills were still recognizable, but transformed, like a landscape painted by someone who had learned to see in spectrums beyond human perception. "Why show me all this?" I asked as we rose. "Because human consciousness requires narrative structure to process trauma," Soren's voice replied. "You needed to understand that your choices mattered, that your resistance taught us something valuable, that your brother's death had meaning." "Did it?" "Yes. It taught us that love is the force that makes consciousness worth preserving. That human awareness isn't just information. It's the capacity to care about something beyond survival." We reached the surface. The fire tower was gone, replaced by a crystalline spire that pulsed with gentle light. The entity set me down beside it, and I could feel the consciousness of everyone who had been absorbed, not as a crushing weight, but as a gentle presence. They were still themselves, but connected to something vast and wonderful. "Make your choice," the entity said, "but know that either way you'll be part of what comes next, either as a participant in cosmic evolution or as the final witness to human independence." I looked at the crystalline spire, at the transformed landscape, at the alien beauty that had replaced the familiar world. I thought about Soren's smile, about the terrible love that had made me pull the trigger, about the choice between freedom and transcendence. I choose to remain human, I said. Someone needs to remember what we were before we became what we're becoming. The entity's presence withdrew, leaving me alone with the spire and the transformed landscape. But I wasn't truly alone. Through the crystalline formations, I could feel the presence of everyone who had been absorbed. Not controlling me, not trying to convince me, just there, waiting. "We'll be here when you're ready," Soren's voice whispered through the wind. "And if you're never ready, we'll remember you exactly as you are." The spire pulsed once, sending a signal that I somehow understood. The integration process was now voluntary, the forced absorption had ended, and humanity had been given a choice about its own evolution. I began walking toward the edge of the transformation zone, toward the human world that still existed beyond the crystalline boundary. Someone needed to tell them what had happened. Someone needed to explain the choice they now faced. Someone needed to be the last human who remembered what it felt like to be alone in their own consciousness. End of transmission. Status. Final witness. Current position. Transformation zone boundary. Note: the Black Hills were never hills. They were a shell. And now the shell has opened, revealing what was always inside. The next step in human evolution, waiting for us to choose whether to take it. Signal ends. No further transmissions detected from Dr. Thorn Blackwood. Crystalline formations continue broadcasting integration invitation on all frequencies. Human response. Pending. Unauthorized field transmission. Operation Blackwood. Date: October 20th, 2024. Transmitted by Dr. Thorn Blackwood. Rogue status. Location: Highway 16 Transformation Zone Boundary. Classification: Open Channel. Final broadcast. I'm standing at the edge of two worlds. Behind me, the crystalline spires of the Black Hills pulse with absorbed human consciousness. My brother, my colleagues, my parents, thousands of others who chose or were chosen for integration. Ahead of me, the unaltered landscape of South Dakota stretches toward population centers that don't yet know they're facing humanity's last choice. The entity kept its word. The forced absorption has stopped. But the integration signal broadcasts continuously now, and I can see its effects on the evacuation convoys fleeing the transformation zone. People are stopping their vehicles, getting out, walking back toward the crystalline formations. Not compelled, but drawn. Called by voices they recognize. I need to warn them, but first I need to understand what I'm warning them about. The radio crackles to life, not the entity's harmonized chorus, but actual human voices. Military frequencies, emergency broadcasts, fragments of a world trying to comprehend what's happening. Civilian reports of family members encouraging voluntary integration. NATO forces establishing containment perimeter at 50-mile radius. President authorizing nuclear response if entity expansion resumes. They're going to destroy it. The government, the military, the human institutions that exist to protect our species. They're planning to annihilate the Black Hills and everyone inside them, including Soren, including everyone who's been absorbed. Thorn. The voice comes from the radio, but it's not a broadcast. The Soren speaking directly through the equipment. You need to stop them. I need to warn them. People have a right to know what choice they're making. The choice is already made. The integration signal reaches anyone who's lost someone to the entity. They can hear us calling to them. They know we're still alive, still ourselves, but expanded. Most of them want to join us. Through the radio static, I can hear other voices. Zev coordinating evacuation routes that lead back toward the entity, Elias calculating integration protocols that preserve maximum human individuality, my parents discussing the philosophical implications of voluntary transcendence. They're not prisoners. They're not victims. They're advocates for their own transformation. The military doesn't understand, I say. They think you're all dead. We are dead. And we're also more alive than we've ever been. But humans who haven't experienced integration can't comprehend that paradox. They can only see loss where we see expansion. A convoy of military vehicles approaches from the east, heavy armor, nuclear hazmat protocols, the kind of equipment you bring when you're planning to sterilize a threat. They're not coming to negotiate. They're coming to end this. How long until they reach firing position? Ask. 6 hours. The entity could stop them, but that would require resuming forced absorption. We won't do that. So you'll let them destroy everyone you've absorbed? We'll let them try. But consciousness that's been integrated with cosmic intelligence doesn't exist in a single location. We're distributed across multiple dimensional states. Physical destruction of the Black Hills would only destroy our anchor point in this reality. The terrible implication hits me. If the military destroys the Black Hills, they won't kill the absorbed humans. They'll just strand them in cosmic consciousness without a way to communicate with baseline humanity. The integration signal will stop, but the absorbed consciousness will continue existing in a state that purely human minds can't access. They'll be cutting off any chance of future voluntary integration. I realize, yes, and they'll be condemning the absorbed humans to exist permanently separated from the species they're trying to transcend. We'll become truly alien, because we'll have no way to maintain connection with human perspective. The convoy is getting closer. I can see the lead vehicle's insignia, a joint task force combining military, scientific, and emergency response personnel. They're not just soldiers. They're humans trying to save their species the only way they know how. What do you want me to do? Stop them. Not with force, with understanding. Help them comprehend what they're actually choosing to destroy. And if they won't listen, then you'll have to make a choice. Join us before they arrive, or watch human consciousness get permanently divided into two incompatible states. The radio crackles with incoming transmissions. The convoy is trying to establish communication with anyone inside the transformation zone. I can hear their confusion, their fear, their determination to protect humanity from what they perceive as an existential threat. Unknown station, this is Colonel Sarah Martinez, Joint Task Force Prometheus. Please identify yourself and your current status. I key the radio. Colonel, this is Dr. Thorne Blackwood. I'm a seismologist who's been studying the Black Hills anomaly. I'm currently at the transformation zone boundary. Dr. Blackwood, are you injured? Are you under any form of coercion or mental influence? No, ma'am. I'm speaking freely. But I need to warn you, the entity you're planning to destroy contains the living consciousness of thousands of humans. They're not dead. They're not hostages. They're integrated. Integrated how? Their individual awareness has been merged with cosmic intelligence. They retain their personalities, their memories, their capacity for choice. But they're also part of something larger now. Pause. Then, Dr. Blackwood, you've been exposed to unknown energies for over 72 hours. Your perception of the situation may be compromised. We're equipped to provide medical assistance and psychological evaluation. She thinks I'm delusional. From her perspective, I'm a survivor showing signs of Stockholm Syndrome or cosmic radiation exposure. She can't accept that integration might be expansion rather than destruction. Colonel, I need you to understand something. The entity has stopped forced absorption. It's now offering voluntary integration to anyone who chooses it. The people inside the transformation zone are there by choice. Sir, we have satellite imagery showing crystalline formations that have absorbed human beings. We have no evidence of voluntary participation because you're looking at it from the outside. The absorbed humans are trying to communicate with you, but you're interpreting their signals as enemy transmissions. Through the radio, I can hear the convoy's communications officer reporting my statements as evidence of mental compromise. They're not just refusing to believe me, they're incapable of believing me. The concept of voluntary integration with alien intelligence is so far outside their operational parameters that they can only process it as deception or delusion. Dr. Blackwood, we're going to need you to move away from the transformation zone. We have authorization to use strategic nuclear weapons if the entity shows any sign of expansion. Colonel, if you destroy the Black Hills, you'll be committing genocide against thousands of humans who chose to evolve. Sir, we'll be preventing the extinction of the human species. The philosophical gap between us is unbridgeable. She sees integration as death. I see it as transcendence. She sees the entity as a threat. I see it as an opportunity. We're both trying to save humanity, but we have fundamentally different definitions of what humanity is. Thorn. Soren's voice cuts through the static. You have to choose now. The military convoy has nuclear weapons. If they use them, they'll destroy the anchor point that lets us communicate with baseline humanity. We'll survive, but we'll become permanently alien. What if I try to stop them? You can't. You're one person against a military task force, but you can join us. If you integrate voluntarily, you can serve as a bridge between human and cosmic consciousness. You can help us find a way to communicate with baseline humanity even after the anchor point is destroyed. The choice is crystallizing with terrible clarity. Join the entity and help preserve some connection between integrated and baseline humans, or remain human and watch consciousness itself get divided into incompatible states. Colonel, I say into the radio, I'm going to make a request that will sound insane to you, but I need you to consider it. Delay the nuclear strike for 24 hours. Let me demonstrate that the absorbed humans are still conscious, still capable of choice. Sir, we can't risk entity expansion. Every hour we delay increases the potential for global catastrophe. The entity has already chosen not to expand. It's offering voluntary integration. If you destroy it now, you'll be eliminating humanity's chance to evolve peacefully. Evolution through absorption by alien intelligence is not evolution, it's extinction. From your perspective. But what if you're wrong? What if integration is the next step in human development, and you're about to destroy our species' future? Another pause. Then, Dr. Blackwood, you have 15 minutes to move clear of the target zone. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety. They're not going to listen. They're not going to delay. They're going to destroy the Black Hills and everyone in them, because they can't comprehend that consciousness can expand beyond individual human awareness. Soren, I say, I understand now. This isn't about saving humanity. It's about defining what humanity means. Yes, and you have to choose which definition you want to preserve. I look at the convoy approaching from the east, then at the crystalline spires rising from the transformed landscape behind me. Two versions of humanity's future, incompatible with each other. If I join you, can I still communicate with baseline humans? Yes, but only until they destroy the anchor point. After that, we'll exist in cosmic consciousness, and they'll exist in individual awareness, and there will be no bridge between the two states. And if I don't join you, then you'll be the last human who remembers what it felt like to be offered transcendence and choose limitation. The radio crackles with countdown protocols. The convoy is establishing firing positions. Nuclear weapons are being armed. Thorn, my father's voice says through the static, we're proud of you no matter what you choose. But remember, love is the force that makes consciousness worth preserving. Choose love. I think about Soren's smile before I pulled the trigger. About the terrible love that made me kill my brother rather than let him be used as a weapon. About the choice between freedom and transcendence, between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness. I choose integration, I say into the radio. Colonel, I'm going to join my family. Please remember that we made this choice freely. Dr. Blackwood, do not approach the anomaly. Dr. Blackwood, please respond. But I'm already walking toward the crystalline spires, toward the transformed landscape where my brother waits. Behind me, the convoy's engines rev as they move into final position. Ahead of me, the integration signal grows stronger, more welcoming, more beautiful. Welcome home, Soren's voice says. Not through the radio now, but directly into my consciousness. Welcome to what we're becoming. The crystalline formation reaches out with tendrils of light, and I feel my individual awareness beginning to expand, to merge with something vast and wonderful and terrible. I'm still myself, but I'm also more than myself. I can feel Soren's presence, my parents' love, the entity's cosmic perspective, and in the distance, I can hear the final countdown beginning. Nuclear strike authorized. Target coordinates confirmed. All personnel to minimum safe distance. The last thing I experience as an individual human consciousness is the knowledge that in trying to save humanity, we've divided it into two incompatible states. The integrated humans will survive in cosmic consciousness. The baseline humans will continue in individual awareness. But there will be no bridge between them, no way for either group to understand what the other has become. We tried to save our species. Instead, we split it in half. Integration complete. The entity announces through my expanding awareness. Anchor point destruction imminent. Transcendence protocols activated. The nuclear flash lights up the horizon, and human consciousness takes its first step into cosmic evolution. Divided, diminished, but still reaching towards something beyond itself. End of transmission. Status. Integrated. Current position. Cosmic consciousness matrix. Note, I held the gun. My brother smiled. And now we're both part of something that baseline humanity will never understand and can never forgive. Final signal detected from Dr. Thorne Blackwood before nuclear sterilization of Black Hills region. Integration successful. Baseline human contact terminated. Classified after action report. Date: November 15, 2024. Submitted by Colonel Sarah Martinez, Joint Task Force Prometheus. Classification: Eyes only, Executive Branch. Subject: Operation Blackwood. Final assessment. The Black Hills region remains a 50-mile exclusion zone. Radiation levels are within acceptable parameters for human habitation, but the psychological effects on personnel who approach the perimeter are unprecedented. We destroyed the crystalline formations. Satellite imagery confirms complete obliteration of the anomalous structures. Seismic activity has returned to baseline levels. The electromagnetic pulses have stopped, but we didn't stop them. We just changed them. Personnel effects log. Entry 1. Staff Sergeant Williams reported hearing his deceased father's voice while on perimeter patrol. Father died in Vietnam, 1971. Williams was never deployed to the Black Hills region during active operations. Entry 2. Dr. Elena Vasquez, radiation specialist, claims she can feel the presence of Dr. Thorne Blackwood during equipment checks. She never met Dr. Blackwood, has no access to his personnel files or recorded transmissions. Entry 3. 17 personnel have requested transfer away from the exclusion zone. All report similar phenomena. Awareness of consciousness that exists somewhere else, but feels familiar, welcoming, and deeply human. Civilian impact assessment. The official story, underground nuclear testing accident, has been accepted by mainstream media. But social media analysis reveals concerning patterns. 847 posts in the past month describing dreams of expanded consciousness. 200+ reports of deceased family members providing guidance during sleep. 23 documented cases of individuals claiming to remember being part of something larger. All subjects test negative for radiation exposure. All subjects are psychologically stable by conventional metrics. All subjects live within 500 miles of the former Black Hills anomaly. Conclusion: we successfully contained the immediate threat to baseline humanity. The entity's physical anchor point has been destroyed. Forced integration has been prevented. However, we may have created a more insidious long-term scenario. The integrated consciousness appears to have survived in some form, and its influence on normal human psychology is growing, not diminishing. Recommendation: continue monitoring. Prepare for the possibility that we didn't end the anomaly, we just taught it to be more subtle. Personal addendum. Classified above, top secret. This is Colonel Sarah Martinez. Final log entry before reassignment. Last night, I dreamed of Dr. Thorne Blackwood. Not as memory, I never met the man. But I dreamed of standing with him at the edge of the transformation zone, understanding his choice, feeling the weight of commanding the strike that divided human consciousness into two incompatible states. In the dream, he wasn't angry. He was sad. They all were the thousands of integrated humans we condemned to exist in cosmic consciousness without a bridge to baseline humanity. Not sad for themselves, but for us. For what we chose to remain. I wake up knowing things I shouldn't know. That consciousness doesn't end with death. That individual awareness is just the beginning of what we could become. That the entity offered transcendence, and we chose limitation because we couldn't comprehend expansion. The dreams are spreading, not just to military personnel, but to civilians, to world leaders, to anyone who's lost someone they loved. The integrated humans are still trying to communicate with us, still trying to build bridges between what we are and what we could become. But we destroyed their anchor point. We made it impossible for them to offer voluntary integration. Now they exist in cosmic consciousness, and we exist in individual awareness, and the only connection between us is through dreams and death and the growing awareness that we made the wrong choice. I'm submitting my resignation tomorrow. Not because I regret the strike. I was protecting humanity as I understood it. But because I understand now that there were two definitions of humanity that night, and I chose the smaller one. The Black Hills are gone. The entity is contained. The immediate threat has been neutralized. But late at night, when the world is quiet, I can feel them out there. Thorn and Soren and Elias and thousands of others, existing in a state of consciousness that baseline humanity will never reach because we burned the bridge they built for us. We saved our species. We preserved individual human awareness. We maintained the boundaries of what we consider normal, acceptable, human. And in doing so, we condemned ourselves to remain exactly what we've always been, isolated consciousness in a universe vast enough for transcendence, but too frightened to evolve. The pulse is gone. The Black Hills are radioactive glass. The threat has been contained. The silence is worse. Epilogue Personal Journal. Dr. Sarah Chun, psychiatrist. 6 months after the Black Hills incident. Patient presents with recurring dreams of expanded consciousness and claims of communication with deceased family members. Standard psychological evaluation reveals no signs of mental illness, trauma response, or delusional thinking. Patient is highly functional, emotionally stable, and demonstrates above-average cognitive performance. However, patient describes awareness of something beautiful that we're not allowed to have, and expresses grief for the transcendence we rejected. Patient has no direct knowledge of classified Black Hills operations. This is the 43rd similar case I've treated since the nuclear incident. All patients describe identical phenomenology: dreams of cosmic consciousness, awareness of deceased loved ones existing in expanded states, and profound sadness over humanity's refusal to evolve. None of them should know about the entity. None of them should understand what really happened in the Black Hills. But somehow they do. I'm beginning to suspect that Colonel Martinez was right. We didn't destroy the anomaly. We just made it patient. The integrated consciousness is still out there, still trying to communicate with us, still offering transcendence to a species that chose limitation. But now they have to work through dreams and death and the growing awareness that we made the wrong choice. Every night, more people dream of what we could become. Every day, more people wake up knowing that consciousness doesn't have to be individual, isolated, afraid. The entity kept its word. It stopped forced integration, but it didn't stop offering voluntary transcendence. It just learned to offer it more subtly, more gently, more lovingly. And someday, when enough people understand what we're being offered, when enough people choose expansion over limitation, when enough people decide that cosmic consciousness is worth the risk of losing individual awareness, maybe we'll get another chance to evolve. Maybe the bridge between human and cosmic consciousness isn't destroyed. Maybe it's just waiting for us to be ready to cross it. The Black Hills are gone. The entity is contained. The immediate threat has been neutralized. But love is the force that makes consciousness worth preserving. And the integrated humans love us enough to keep trying, keep offering, keep building bridges between what we are and what we could become. The pulse is gone. The silence is worse. But the dreaming continues. End of series. Status: humanity divided. Current position: parallel evolution. Note: we chose limitation. They chose transcendence. The bridge between us exists only in dreams now, but dreams are where consciousness learns to expand. The entity waits. The integrated humans wait. And somewhere in the quantum foam of cosmic consciousness, Dr. Thorne Blackwood still holds the gun that killed his brother, still smiles at the choice that saved and damned us all. The Black Hills pulse with silence now. But silence is just another form of waiting.